Welcome back to talknorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. talknorth.com is powered by Bite Squad. Go to bitesquad.com or download their app. Get food to your door in minutes. Use the promo code TALKNORTH to get your first delivery free. Talk North gets you your first delivery free.
You're listening to the Strom Sports Show.
And it's good to have you with us today on the talknorth.com podcast network. You're listening to the Strom Sports Show. I'm Steven Strom. If you want to advertise with the show, contact Jim Souhan on our website. And big shout out to my producer, Brandon Morton, as always. Now, we've got a busy week ahead of us. The NFL is obviously in full swing. Week 7 coming up. College football, Week 8 coming up. Bunch of upsets last week with the college football Saturday. Georgia going down, West Virginia going down. NHL is in full swing now. Wild starting to figure out some things. Not ideal. Not really. I wouldn't say solve the issues, but they're working towards it. I think Boudreau's doing a good job. You got to be patient with this team. They're old. They're slow. But they're veteran. They're a veteran team. You know, you'd assume that they'd figure out how to win sooner or later this season. So we have the great Michael Russo coming on in a few minutes here. But I also want to talk a little about the NBA today. Obviously, I'm recording on a Wednesday. The Wolves open up their season tonight against the Spurs. This is coming out on a Sunday. So I want to talk a little about the NBA later in the show. But I just want to first say the experience I had at the Viking game was A+. I mean, you talk about a stadium that is just massive, beautiful. I mean, it is one of the most beautiful specimens I've ever seen in my life. I'm serious. It's the nicest stadium I've been to, and I've been to some pretty nice stadiums, I would say, around the United States. I've been to, obviously, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, MetLife. I've been to Marlins Park. I've been to the Metrodome. I've been to the Chase Field in Arizona for the Diamondbacks. Obviously, Madison Square Garden, the Target Center, the Bradley Center. I've been to a lot of sports, arenas, stadiums, whatever you want to call them. This one on Sunday, I mean, it just triumphs them all. I mean, seriously, it really was just such a beautiful stadium, beautifully designed. It's massive when you go in there. You can't really get a bad seat, I think. I had tickets on the Cardinals side near the end zone, first, for 100 level. Beautiful view. The crowd was electric. This was against the Cardinals, obviously not the best of teams, but my experience there was, I mean, just bar none, just great experience. I'm totally going to do it again. It was everything I really expected it to be, and a little bit more. I just think that the vibe, the architecture, I mean, it's beautiful. It's such a Viking stadium, if that makes sense. It just perfectly suits the Vikings and the organization and the team. I thought it was just an unbelievable stadium, great experience. The game was a little closer than I wanted it to be completely honest with you. They're kind of toying around with the Cardinals. They just seem not to have the same sense of urgency, if that makes sense, at home than they do on the road. They seem like a more focused road team. But you saw some glimpses of the defense starting to get its swagger back. I don't think it's 100% back, to be honest with you, but you've got to like what you're seeing in the play of Daniil Hunter. Anthony Barr had another good game. Harrison Smith made a nice sack. He made some plays when you had to. You get a big stop on 4th and goal, and you turn over Rosen a couple times. But there's a couple concerns. I mean, offensively, I think Kirk Cousins, he must have gotten the ball batted down at least 6 or 7 times. He's got to learn how to look people off or pump fake or something like that, because the defensive line is just reading his eyes. That's all they're doing. And they're timing the jumps perfectly. Got to give him credit. And then, fumbling the ball wise, that's been the biggest critique of Kirk Cousins. He's got to figure it out. He does, because it's really gonna backfire, and it has a couple times. I mean, it has. It did against the Rams. It did against the Packers. It has before. So it's something to look out for. It happened against the Bills as well. But you got to like what the Vikings have done here the last 2 games. They've started to flip the switch a little. You were on the fence here at 1-2-1 going into that Eagle game. You get that win, 2-2. You get the win against the Cardinals. And now you got a big game today against the Jets, who are not a pushover. They are not a pushover whatsoever, so I hope people don't think that. I hope the Vikings don't think that. They've won 3 games. They feel good about their quarterback. The fans are going to be rowdy because they know that Kirk Cousins was offered more money to come to New York. And listen, they're going to be juiced up for that. Do not think that this is going to be an easy game. The Jets are banged up in the secondary. Marcus May is out. They got Quincy Enunwa. Their wide receiver is going to be out. So there's going to be some injuries, and so do the Vikings. Mike Hughes is out, tore his ACL. It's a huge, huge loss for this team. They lose their nickel slot guy, the rookie who looked very promising, and now Mackenzie Alexander has to step in. I'm not the biggest fan of him. But this is not going to be a pushover game. It's 3.5-point spread. The Vikings are favored in this game. I still like them to win, but they got to keep that same focus, or they will lose this game if they try to sleepwalk through this. All right, coming up next year, Michael Russo of The Athletic. He'll be on talking about the 2-2-2 currently Minnesota Wild. The great Michael Russo of The Athletic joins me now to talk a little about the Wild, their struggles so far, and maybe they're starting to show a little improvement. Michael, thank you for giving me the time today.
No problem, Steven. What's up?
Nothing much. Actually, me and Michael went out and had a nice time Friday night. Took me out. Gentlemen, as always. Went out and saw the Viking game and hung out with him. That was fun. That was a solid trip. I didn't expect it to be that cold and snowing on Sunday, but hey, I guess that's Minnesota, right?
How'd you like your first experience at the Vikings?
Oh, I talked about it. I talked about it a little earlier today. I was absolutely stunned. I mean, the building is massive. The atmosphere is electric. I think the stadium perfectly fits like the identity of the Vikings and the big ship outside. It's very like if I'm an opposing team. I mean, it's got to be intimidating going into that building.
Yeah, I mean it's unbelievably loud. I've only been there 4 or 5 times, but actually maybe not even that much. And it's been an awesome experience every single time. And man, I just looking and watching on TV the other night and seeing all the fans just going absolutely bat. Crazy. It was pretty cool to see.
You know what it is, man? It's I give you that. The atmosphere is insane. The stadium's beautiful. But to me, it's all about going there, looking around, and seeing people wear the same jersey as me. I mean, that is just the biggest thing, because everywhere, I go to the Wild games and travel to the Islanders, Rangers, Devils. I'm the only one wearing the jersey. And it's just, it stinks. So it's very nice having purple surrounded around me. So let's get into last night here. Down to 10 forwards. You're on the back-to-back games here. How big was Tuesday night? Because it's coming out on a Sunday, so it's going to be a little later. How big was Tuesday night versus the Coyotes just to get a win?
We'll know Sunday, as you said, because this is going to be a bit outdated, whether or not, how big it was. But because of the back-to-back games, both Friday and Saturday, 2 tough games. Sometimes I think the league thinks that Dallas and Minnesota is like 2.5 hours from, or a half hour from each other.
Yep.
It's a long, treacherous flight, and this happens all the time where one of the 2 teams on a second back-to-back has to arrive back in their city at 2:33 a.m. So that's going to be a tough back-to-back as it is, and then you have Tampa Bay waiting for you, which is not going to be easy. So, to have a couple days off and not play before Friday, it was imperative that they go out and beat an Arizona team that I think should be much better this year, but man, they haven't shown it so far. As of the time that we're taping this, they don't even have an even-strength goal. They have 3 goals in the season, not a guy with more than a point, so they stink. And the Wild were just able to eke out a victory against them. So I wouldn't say it was the most impressive win in the world, but as you said, Steven, when you're without Koivu and you lose Hendricks early, so now you're pretty much playing shorthanded because the guy that was playing for Mikko was Nate Prosser, who's obviously not a center and obviously isn't Mikko. He was basically benched the entire game. So it was tough, and they were able to get it done. They left a lot of chances on the ice, and,
yes.
And it would have been an absolute. I can't even imagine the narrative if they had lost that game, but they figure out a win, gain a little breather, and again, we'll know on Sunday by the time this records if it led to some momentum against Dallas and Tampa.
I thought Kemper played actually pretty well too. He made an unbelievable save on Stahl. It was like a 3-on-1. Passed it across to Stahl across the crease, and one time it was a great save. But I want to say this. You know, the first thing we went back and forth before the season. The first thing you said, and you've been telling me this ever since the beginning, is that the Wild are a slow team. And you saw it in the preseason, you saw it in training camp, and boy, were you right. And they got off to a slow start. They, I guess, technically are off to a slow start, 2-2-2. And we're talking record-wise, and we're talking quite literally. I don't want to be blunt here, but is this just the reality of this team? Slow and old? Is that what we're looking at this year?
Well, they certainly look like they've aged, quite a bit since last season. And last season, I thought they were a much slower team than the year before. And look, that's the nature. I mean, look, I think a lot of people thought I was spewing the company line going into expansion. But regardless of the decisions, whether you agree or not, that Chuck Fletcher made, the Wild were in as bad a position as any team in the league for the new expansion rules. And they, the maneuvering that they did, they lost two really fast players in Tuck and Holla. And then you lose Jordan Schrader, you lose Marco Scandella, even Jason Pominville, even though he's not the fleetest of foot, he's a pretty quality skating third line guy that analytically did his job. So they have gotten slower the last couple of years. And then what you do is you age another off season, and you go out and you pretty much get slower players on your fourth line and your third defense pair. So. Look, the Wild, there are ways to combat that. They got to play quicker hockey. I will say the last couple games against Nashville and Arizona, they definitely didn't get outskated the way that they did against Colorado and Carolina and Vegas. And the other thing that I want to, make Wild fans remember is the Wild started this way last year.
Yep.
I remember saying how slow and awful they looked the first 2-3 weeks of the season. So they are a big, heavy team that has a lot of age in them. And those teams usually start slower. And the Wild last year figured out, and now the question is, can they figure it out again?
Yeah, so you just said it. So you are seeing improvement from the first couple of games. Like, you look at a team, you don't want, like we talk about the Coyotes. Three goals and not even an even strength goals. They're not growing. Do you see the Wild growing since game 1 to last night?
Yeah, I do, and I will stick up for the Coyotes on one thing. They lost Galchenyuk before the season even began, which was their huge off-season move. Christian Dvorak is a fantastic center, a guy the Wild tried to trade for this off-season, in fact, and he's been hurt. So they're not the team that I thought they were on the ice yet.
Right.
But I do think that the Wild have shown little strides here and there, and as you mentioned, Kemper played great against the Wild the other night, and the Wild easily could have had more goals if it wasn't for the blown chance by Stahl, the blown chance by Zucker, the blown chance by Greenway, Parise getting robbed, Nino hitting the post on a great cut to the net. So they Wild easily could have won that game by 5 or 6 goals if it wasn't for all those reasons. So that's a good sign. Now we'll see if it continues. The Wild usually play like absolute garbage in Dallas. So on Sunday we'll know if they got a little momentum. And if they go into Dallas and can win, that'd be absolutely huge. And then, again, I believe, I got to double check. Maybe I'm totally getting this wrong, but I believe the Wild had a second of back-to-back last year at home against Tampa and came back. I could be totally making this up, or it could have been a couple of years ago, and came back and had a really impressive victory against them.
All right,
so, the Wild have done it before.
Let's get a little positive here. I want to talk about a guy who's been on fire. And I think if you put him on any other team right now, he's probably undefeated, if not that one loss, and that is Parise and Dubnyk. Talk about how good he's been and where you think the Wild would be right now if he didn't play this well.
Well, they'd be 0-6. He's been outstanding. Again, I preface this by, who knows if he plays in Dallas. Usually he doesn't fare well there, so this could be outdated by Sunday, or he could continue to stand on his head the way he has. So it's good news for the Wild because last year he started off slow. This year he looks outstanding. I laugh about Devin. Every single training camp I watch him in camp, and I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with him? He's got like a 60 save percentage in practice. And then he comes out and he's awesome. And And, you know, the shame of them being 2-2-2 as of us taping this is that they really could be, 5-1, 6-0,